So I am Ingrid P. Lewis Martin. I am the Senior Advisor to Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and I want to welcome you to Brooklyn Borough Hall. I also want to congratulate you on being selected as our new Community Board inductees for 2018. How many people are board members for the very, very first time? Wow. Impressive. This is very impressive, and I hope that it's a very good thing. So I always do this every year. I just try to find out or do an assessment on the boards that are here. How many people are here from Board 1? Okay. Board 2? Board 3? Board 4? Board 5? Board 6? Board 7? Board 8? Board 9? Board 10, Board 11, Board 12, Board 13, ooh, all right now, Board 14, Board 15, Board 16, Board 17, Board 18. Wow, I am really impressed. We have representation from every single board. I do believe that this is the first year since we've been selecting board members in partnership with the City Council that we've had representation from every single board at an induction. So we're really impressed. Keisha, please ask all the liaisons to come in because, you know, I want to introduce them. So I want to thank each of you for coming tonight. It's indeed a pleasure for us to work in partnership with you. Once we select our board members, then there's not very much more that we can do. We get accused of doing a lot of things that we don't do, but we have a really great team here at Borough Hall, and we want to work in partnership with you, and we want you to be able to share as much information with the community as possible, and we want you to share with us as much information as possible. So I'm waiting for our liaisons to come in. In the interim, I'm going to introduce to you our attorney, Mr. Andrew Gennardis, and he, yes, please do give him a round of applause. Every year, he really facilitates this induction. If the BP cannot be here, you know, I do have the authority to install you on his behalf, but Andrew really has been a formidable partner. He knows all the rules and the regulations, and he always, you know, strives to do his best, so he always takes on that responsibility, as well as he ensures that you know the rules and the regulations on how to run and operate your board. His dad, is your dad here this year? Sorry? Is your dad here this year? We don't have his dad. This is the first year without your dad. I feel a loss. I knew it was something missing. His dad is a parliamentarian, and he knows really Robert's Rules of Order frontwards and backwards, and he gives a great workshop on that, and you can also invite him to your board to do the workshop. So I'm going to let Andrew say a few words. I'm going to try to round up as many liaisons as possible so that, especially for you new board members, you can meet your liaison. And again, I want to thank you for the amount of community service that you do and the amount of community service that you will do as a community board member. So I want to give yourselves an applause. Now you can clap louder for yourselves now. Come on now. You're clapping for you. And I want to just thank you. So the board members, liaisons are coming in, so I'm going to still give Andrew the mic, and then I'm going to go find them. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Good evening, everybody. Congratulations and welcome to your, for some of you it's a reappointment, but for many of you it's a new appointment to service on one of Brooklyn's 18 community boards. We're very excited to have you all here. We're going to have a fun night tonight, I promise. There'll be some laughs, there'll be some crying, there'll be some sighing, there'll be some, oh my God, what did I get myself into? There'll be every range of emotion you can think of. We'll have that tonight in like an hour and a half's time, so it's going to be like crazy. But really, tonight's a great night. We're going to have a bunch of great speakers here. You see the program in your packets. We're going to have speakers from the mayor's office, from the Office of Management and Budget, from the city's Conflict of Interest Board, as well as from myself and Richard Barak in our office, who is our land use director. So you're going to get the full spectrum of community board know-how tonight. And know that we are always here as a resource for you. Borough Hall staff, whether it's myself, your community board liaison, Ingrid, the senior advisor, or her unit, we here at Borough Hall are here to help you be the best community board members you possibly can be. And that is our first and foremost priority. So with that, I again welcome you all, congratulate you all, and I believe as we're waiting for the other liaisons to come in, I know we ran out of orientation packets. Did everybody, if you didn't get a packet when you came in, just raise your hand so we know, so Keisha knows, not we, Keisha's in charge of this. It's her job. My job is just to ask the questions. So I think we need about 10 or so, Keisha. And are everybody else is outside, or they're coming in? Okay. Okay. So while we're waiting for the rest of our liaisons to trickle in, I know we have 5 of them here, but I want to introduce them all at once, so we'll wait till they come in. We're going to do the most important part of the evening. Is this on? This is on. I don't need to hold both. Okay. We are going to do the most important part of the evening right now, which is the swearing of the oath, making you all official community board members. So I'm going to ask everybody to please stand. Okay. Raise your right hands and repeat after me. I, state your name, do hereby affirm that I will observe and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, the Charter of the City of New York, and the bylaws of my community board, and will perform all duties as a member of my community board to the best of my ability. Congratulations.
So congratulations, you are now actual community board inductees, so we welcome you.
But you can't leave yet.
No.
You got to stay for the whole program.
So I'm going to ask each one of our liaisons to come up one at a time in whatever order you're in. Candace, you can come first. You can state your name, what board you represent.
I'm so sorry, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. My name is Candace Julian, Deputy Program Officer here at Borough Hall. I represent Community Board 3, Bed-Stuy. Do we have any new members in the audience? Hello. Looking forward to working with you all. A great team. Thank you all so much for your service.
Hello, my name is Josh Levin. I represent Community Board 11, Bath Beach, and Bensonhurst. Thank you very much for having me be part of your community.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Nan Blackshear, and I'm the liaison for Community Board 2. Welcome and congratulations to you. May I see the hands for the new members of Community Board 2? Please raise your hand. Okay, welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Callow. I work in topography. I represent Community Board 10. That's Decker Heights and Bay Ridge. I see one person here, Justin. I got your link to your website. But does that have anybody else here from Community Board 10? Excellent. Nice to meet you guys.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Drummond. I am Borough President Adams Policy Analyst for Housing and Transportation, and I am the liaison for Community Board 5, East New York. So, any East New York folks here? I see one. Oh, all right. All right. Well, welcome and congratulations.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ina Gusenfeld. I work in the Land Use Division here, and I represent Community Board 13. And here's Eddie standing tall like our parachute jump. And I'm really excited to welcome the new members of CB13 and to continue to be your liaison. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Malcolm McDaniel. I am the community liaison for Community Board 16 and also 17. Can I see the hands? I know y'all already. That's all right. That's what's up. We're gonna make it a great year. Welcome, and let's just get it. Let's just do it.
Thank you. It feels like the price is right. Everyone's coming down. Good evening, everybody. I'm Talia Granshaw. I am the representative for Sunset Park and Winter Terrace, CB7. I see a couple folks over here. A community I'm proud to say I grew up in and still have family in. We are here at your service. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Daniel. I am standing up, but I can be loud if you can't see me. I am responsible for outreach here in the Office of the Borough President, and I am the liaison for Community Board 8. Anybody from Community Board 8 here? Great, awesome. Great to see you, 8, not 18. I live in 18. And we represent in that area Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, and Weeksville. Welcome, everyone.
Is that everybody?
So could all the liaisons just come back out one more time so they can get a look at you, please? Come on down. Come on down. There's someone said the price is right. So I want to just thank all our liaisons. So these are the people who will work with you throughout the course of the years, the next 2 years. They'll bring you information. You will give them information. And we want to have a really great work relationship. I also want to take the opportunity to recognize some of my team members who are here, who made this night possible. My deputy isn't here. His name is David Johnson. He had to leave. He had to take care of his family emergency, so he couldn't be here with us. I have my executive assistant, who many of you will know and hear from a lot, Keisha Humphreys. Karen Ford and Dawn, please come down. I have my special assistant that we took with us from the Senate, Karen Ford, so she's a longtime Team Adams member. And I have my other special assistant, Dawn Baskerville. So we all work to serve you on behalf of the Brooklyn Borough President. So we wish you a good evening. I'm going to leave you in the most capable hands of Andrew Gennardis, and I wish you the best. Thank you. Yes, congratulations again.
All right. So we are just going to keep rolling right along here and jump right into our workshop, our agenda for this evening. And we're going to start by hearing a brief overview and presentation from the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit and the Brooklyn Borough Director from the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit, Daniel Abramson. Dan?
Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing tonight? So let's see. I see so many people here I know. Raise your hand if we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. So for all of you, hopefully you won't send too many potholes my way, but if you ever have an issue, you can, and I'm going to put my contact info in the back. I'm the Brooklyn Borough Director for the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit, and it's my job to be your source of information and to respond to issues in your neighborhood at your community board when you hear about them. But I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about you guys and the community board. The community boards are the place where the city government brings information first, whether it's transportation, housing, sustainability, safety issues. The community board is the place where city government interfaces with the community, and you guys are the ones who let city government know what you think about our proposals, about our policies, about our resources. So raise your hand if you join the community board because you're really concerned about education issues. A lot of people. How about development or rezoning? Okay, that's a popular one. How about transportation or street safety? How about liquor licenses and small business issues? All right, so we got a lot in common. These are a lot of the things you'll be voting on, and I think it's important that you get used to raising your hand because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be voting. You're going to be voicing your opinion. So I just want to thank you. You know, there are a lot of people who have served on community boards who have gone on to do great things in an official capacity. Our Speaker of the City Council, for instance, started off as the chair of a community board in Manhattan. And then there are a lot of people who just serve silently for years, and everyone just knows that, hey, that's Joe or that's Mary, and if I have an issue, I need to know what's going on in government. Maybe I haven't been plugged in all the time, but they have. So on behalf of all those people who maybe don't have the time to serve, I want to thank you guys for your service, and once again reiterate that if you need anything, I'm there for you, and I'll put my contact information in the back. So thank you very much.
Dan forgot the most important person who served on their community board and went on to do great things. I was a member of my community board for 3 years. The best 3 years of my life serving on Community Board 10 in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. This will also be Dan's last time giving a presentation here because you gave my entire remarks for later on. Just kidding. Just kidding, guys. Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to kind of the meat and potatoes of a big part of what community boards do and where your voice can have the biggest impact, and that is on budget priorities. And we're going to have a presentation now from the New York City Office of Management and Budget, and we're going to have a budget basics workshop. So I'm going to throw it over to the folks at OMB and ask Carolyn to come up. Thank you, Carolyn.
Hello, thank you. How's everyone doing? Congratulations on becoming public servants. We're all here, and it's a great city we live in, and so thank you for your service. I'm waiting for the clicker, so I'm just going to keep talking and thanking you. Okay, so my name is Carolyn Haggerty. I'm here from the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget, the Community Board unit. So we're a small unit, and we're all about putting the community board's voice into the city's budget process. So today, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the budget process in general and where community boards fit into that. It's a very important role. And so I'm going to go over the online form that is used for your one-time-a-year submissions. That's coming up at the end of October is when it's submitted. And when to expect responses to those submissions, and an overview of helpful resources and consultations that happen throughout the year in preparation for those submissions. So as a general overview of the city's budget, there are many different phases gearing up to the adopted budget. We first start in the preliminary budget in January. So the fiscal year begins July 1st. We start working, the year before that, essentially. But the first kind of rough draft that comes out that gives the first kind of shake of what the budget will look like is the preliminary budget that's in January. So this has different departmental estimates of the agencies and just kind of like a rough draft of what you will see in the future. The executive budget comes out in April, and that's also known as the mayor's budget. This is a better view of what major initiatives will be coming up in the next year. The mayor gives a presentation that's telecasted on New York One, and that's kind of a major event in the timeline. Leading up to the adopted budget, the mayor works with the city council for the adopted budget that hopefully happens the beginning of June. And that is adopted by the city council and signed by the mayor. So there are a lot of moving parts in this. And for you to know, community board's input is before this whole process happens starting in January. So your voice is one of the first inputs to be given in the budget. So it is very important that your submission that happens at the end of October, voted on by your board, is a good, very honed statement of what you believe is going on in your district, and the statements that you're making are very, accurate and concise and very honed. So there are two charter mandated submissions for the community boards. First is the long-term district need statements. These are your more narratives where you can talk about different areas about what's going on in your community district. The second are very specific budget requests. So we've united these two mandates of the board into one submission form. So they should be relating to one another. If you're talking about a change in demographic, you have a younger population coming in, you may have budget requests for the Department of Education or Department of Youth and Community Development for more after-school programs. They should really be relating to one another and speaking on what's going on. One thing I wanted to highlight is the budget requests are broken into capital and expense budget requests. And your district managers and chairs can help you with the difference in between this, but capital budgets, as a general statement, they are for works that are, they last 5 years and are over $35,000. So for example, reconstruction of a park would be a capital budget, and that is paid for with debt service in the budget. Expense items are recurring expenses such as programs or personnel, and those are rebooted every year. So those would be smaller expenses, but add up, of course, to be the bulk of the budget. Again, the submission of your statement of district needs and budget requests is due on October 31st. And just to talk a little bit about the structure of the form that's used for the submission, it's broken into 7 different policy areas, and you may, when looking at these, see that they kind of match up with your board's committees. They're healthcare and human services, youth, education, and child welfare, public safety and emergency services, core infrastructure and city services, housing, economic development and land use, transportation, and parks, cultural, and other community facilities. So within these general overarching 7 policy areas, within them are specific agencies and budget requests tied to those agencies that go within them. So for each policy area, you are first asked about the most important issue of that overlying policy area, and then it dives, into more narrow needs that you can give narratives about, and then finally the specific budget requests that are related to those agencies within the policy area. And actually today was a big day. The online forum was opened, so you can begin working on those over the course of the summer and all the way into the submission in October. And we just like to open that so you can start kind of refining any needs from last year. And just so you know, the form is open with last year's submission, so you're not starting with a blank canvas every year. You're able to see what your board submitted last year. And again, we do work directly with your district managers and chairs, so every board kind of does this submission differently. So if you'd like to see what's going on, you'd speak to them and they would have more specifics of how your board does it. So once you submit at the end of October, tying back to the overall, the general city's budget process, you first receive responses to your specific budget requests with the preliminary budget, that is in January. And for this, the agencies give responses to each of your budget requests. So our unit comes out with a document, it has all the request information you filled out, and right next to it would be the agency's response. After these responses, your board is able to respond to the responses by writing a letter of comment or a statement on the preliminary budget. This is the charter mandated exercise for the board to write a letter, and you may submit it to your borough president, mayor, council members, and the public to speak on your thoughts on the preliminary budget and more specifically the responses you received to your budget requests. So this is another step that your board can advocate for what you had submitted. Again, tying back to the general city's budget process, for the executive budget and adopted budgets, you'll receive a similar document, but it will have the Office of Management and Budget's responses to your budget requests. So finally, the adopted budget will have the final response to your budget requests. They may say, yes, we're going to accommodate this the next fiscal year, or they may say, check back with us, we need more information, let's continue the dialogue. So I've talked about the responses to your submissions. Leading up to your submissions, and again, the form is open, there are set consultations throughout the year with city agencies. So the first of those are district consultations, and this is the opportunity for your district managers to meet one-on-one with agency representatives. This is up to the board to organize. So you don't have to meet with all of the different agencies, but maybe the Department of Sanitation, for example, has a specific district service chief. So you can have one-on-one meetings with them. And we suggest that the late spring and around June, the district manager meets with your agency reps to go over your specific budget requests, gearing up to your submission again. In September, the borough consultations happen, and that is up to our unit to schedule and organize and do all the logistics for. Over the course of the month of September, over 13 days, we have up to about 80 different meetings. So Brooklyn, as a borough, all 18 boards, your district managers and chairs, will meet here at Borough Hall and come face-to-face with the agency representatives. So gearing up to that, we have set agendas set by the boards, and that is a main time in the year to meet with higher level agency representatives. So keep an eye out for those. If you have specific questions that you would like answered by agencies, the agendas will be being set for those soon. In addition to these consultations, there are public hearings throughout the year. So for your board, you would hold a public hearing to vote on the priorities of your budget requests. So that would happen before the submission at the end of October. And also the letter of comment that I mentioned before, some boards, according to your bylaws, would also hold a public hearing for that before submitting it to the public. On the other end of things, boards also have the ability to testify at public hearings. So there are borough board public hearings happening in February, which again is between the preliminary and executive budgets, and also at city council hearings, which are before the executive and adopted budgets. So again, you have this one main submission at the end of October, but throughout the year, there are different checkpoints that are developing your requests and also responding to the reactions to them. So this is, again, just an overview of the borough budget consultations, but essentially the boards set the agendas. These are your meetings as you're represented by your district managers and chairs. The agencies with whom the board meets with will provide written responses, and we've really worked over the past few years to get more good bulk of an information back to you based on the questions that the board is asking. And again, OMB, the community board unit, coordinates the calendar and facilitates the collection of responses and all the attachments and good information that the agency will submit. And just as this is a little difficult to see, but this is an example of the calendar. Over the course of 13 days around the city, we have close to 80 meetings, so it's a lot to coordinate. So this is just a list of some documents that are available to you to help you not only prepare for your submissions, but also learn about the city as a whole and the different players and what the agencies actually do. So on the OMB's website, you can look at the past year's expense and capital budgets are available, as well as the registers of board requests, and that is the document that we come out with the responses to your budget requests. The district resource statements is a document that our unit comes out with the 15 top service delivery agencies. These are emailed to your boards directly with information provided directly from the agencies, breaking down performance and personnel indicators at the community district level. So these are helpful documents to kind of see what's going on, and especially in your district. And again, the capital commitment plan from past years is on OMB's website. I'm going to jump to the Office of Operations has the Mayor's Management Report. And if you're looking for just a general overview of any agency, I would suggest this being one of your first stops. The Mayor's Management Report comes out every year, and the agencies will give not only their mission statements and the services that they provide, but some performance indicators from the past year. And it's a great just kind of brief overview of what's going on in our city and what our taxes pay for. So I'm going to jump now to the Department of City Planning because they have some great resources on their website. And actually, our colleague Arundhati from City Planning is going to talk a little bit about those. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arundhati. I'm also a proud Brooklyn resident, so I'm very happy to be here. So how many of you felt like the city's budget process is very complicated? Okay, that's pretty good. So just trust me, after you go through a year of this, it'll all make a lot more sense. But the big takeaway that you should have is that the city is an amazing place that it actually considers community board budget requests as a part of how it helps these agencies help inform the way they think about their budget and their budget priorities. And therefore, getting your budget priorities right is is important, and how you think about them, and the information that you provide for these budget requests and your overarching needs is also important. So what city planning is here to do is to help you not just with the online form, but also provide you with a lot of information that can help you sort of really try and better understand the own needs within your neighborhoods. So what I'd like to spend a few minutes is actually going through some of our tools that are available on our website right now. So these are all publicly available tools that you can go on DCP's website and access. So the first one, yeah. Is this deck available for distribution afterwards? Yeah, great. So the first one that I'd like to point out is something that we call the community portal. And if you go onto the community portal, there is a page available for every single community district. So you can go into this community district and you can get some overarching high-level information about your community district. Who lives there, what is the unemployment rate, what is the rent burden rate, and also it sort of provides some overarching context for what that actually means. So for example, if you have a rent burden in your district is 40%, what does that mean compared to the city and compared to the borough? So we really help provide some overarching context for that. We also provide a lot of information around the built environment. So if you are in the land use and zoning committee or a housing committee, for example, you can see the development and activity that's going on in your district. And this would also be the place where you could go and see what your community board submitted last year. So every year, you community boards spend a lot of time thinking about your overarching needs and your budget requests, and we consolidate all of that in a report and we publish it on this particular portal. So if you want to familiarize yourself with what your community board is submitting for the past 10 years, we've got all those archive statements up there as well. The second tool is something called as the New York City Facilities Explorer. Now, a lot of you are on your community board to advocate for better facilities. Maybe you want new schools, maybe you want new parks, maybe you want more after-school programs or daycare centers, but how do you actually know how many daycare centers actually exist in your district right now? So if you go onto the Facilities Explorer, you should be able to see all of the city-owned, operated, and managed state and citywide facilities that are available in your district. And you can actually select by particular type of facility, and you can see the distribution of those facilities within the district. And all of these tools are super easy to use, particularly the community portal itself. We actually had a lot of district managers to come in and give their view on the design itself. So it's very easy to use. When you go on there, you should be able to understand it pretty easily. The third tool is something called a ZOLA. So how many of you here are going to be on the land use committee? Okay, so a few of you. So I won't get into it, and there'll be another presentation on that, but that is mainly for you to get a better sense of what the zoning and land use is within your district. And the final tool is our New York City Census Fact Finder, which we just recently rebranded to be the New York City Population Fact Finder. And that actually pulls a whole lot of information from the census data, as well as the American Community Survey data, to give you a huge wealth of socioeconomic and demographic data of everything that's in your district, and not just in your district. If you want to break it down to certain neighborhoods within your district, you'll be able to do that within this particular tool. And as you sort of go through and prepare your need statements and your budget requests, you perhaps will find these tools very useful, and all of us here at OMB, as well as City Planning, are here to help you learn how to use these tools and take information and data from it so that it can help articulate the way you think about your needs as you submit them for city agencies and the mayor as well. Thank you.
So Andrew said he'll distribute this, but just so you know, this is our contact information at the end of the PowerPoint when you receive it, or you could write it down now. So feel free, our lines are always open. We're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right. We'll send this to you, but it's going to cost you guys something. The budget isn't cheap. It's not free. So next, I don't think Alex is here from the Conflict of Interest Board. No. So we're going to go ahead and skip while we wait for Alex to join us. And we're going to come to the second best part of the night. The best part of the night was getting sworn in. The second best part of the night is my presentation. So just give me a second to cue this up. Or Joe, you got it? Okay. Everybody needs to have a Joe around to just do these things, because Joe's great. Okay. Community Board orientation. So, we're going to talk about a couple of things tonight. First, we're going to talk about kind of an overview as community boards and their role in city government and what your role in city government is. Then we're going to talk about the rights and responsibilities of community board members. We're going to talk about different processes and rules regarding community board meetings. I guarantee this is the one part you're going to want to pay attention to the most, because without fail, after every orientation, I come in the next day or the next week, and I have like 30 voice messages and emails from people asking me questions about meeting procedures and rules and bylaws and Robert's Rules of Order and all that stuff. This is the stuff you'll probably spend a lot of your time trying to understand the most. Not the process, not the substance stuff about how to do budget submissions. It's actually understanding how you participate in your community board meetings and how you can actually get things done. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about how to be rock star community board members. And I'm talking from experience when I give you that part of the presentation. So let's go right in. Community boards are separate city agencies with specific authority granted by the New York City Charter. This is very important to understand and to realize. That means that as a community board, there's no one that oversees you. There's no one that controls you, no one that dictates to you what you can do, what you can't do, how you can vote, how you should vote, what you should do on this question, what you should do on that question. Community boards are separate, independent city agencies defined by the New York City Charter. And once you understand that, that allows you to be much more expansive in how you interpret your role on the community board, and it gives you a lot more understanding and leeway in terms of what you can do for your community as a member of the community board. The best way to think about community boards is that they are partners in city government with different city agencies to help the city agencies carry out their mandates in the city charter. So we just heard from OMB and city planning about how they take all of the inputs from the community boards through the budget process and the planning process, and they try to provide documents and kind of shape how the city spends its money and allocates its resources. Well, they wouldn't be able to do any of that if they didn't have the feedback from the community boards themselves. You are the on-the-ground eyes and ears for each of the different city agencies, whether it's our office or the Department of Transportation or Sanitation or Education or Parks or OMB or City Planning. Every city agency needs to hear from community boards. So you should always think of yourselves as partners with every other agency in the city. Community board members, unfortunately, nothing that you vote on is dispository. It means that everything you do is advisory. So there'll be times when the community board will say, we want to see X, but sometimes X doesn't happen for whatever reason. Your role is advisory. It does not mean that you're ignored. That does not mean that no one cares. You take that role seriously, and we all take that role very seriously. And like I said earlier, because you're our eyes and ears, we want to be hearing advice from our community board members on the ground. Community boards and the Borough President's office. So you're all here today. You were invited by our office because the Borough President is charter mandated to appoint each and every member of the community board. Half of the appointments that we make are upon the recommendation of a city council member or members, depending on where your district boundaries are, and the other half are appointed just by the Borough President's office. That's the only connection we have to you. That's the only control. I don't even want to use that word. That's the only influence we have over community boards is appointing them. We can't tell you how to vote. We can't tell you which district manager to hire. We can't tell you what day to hold your meetings. We can't tell you where to hold your meetings. We can't tell you which committees to have or how many people to put on committees or what agenda items should be on your committees. That's not our role here at all. We just appoint you. But you saw we have liaisons. I'm here. Our office is here. We're here to support you in your role. We're here to answer any questions you have. Like I said at the start of the presentation or the program, we're here to make you the best community board members you can. So you should always feel comfortable calling us. Call your liaisons first if you ever have a question. Or if you see them at a meeting, that's your first line of defense, talking to your liaison. If they can't answer the question, they can escalate it either to Ingrid or her unit, or to myself if it's a legal question or a charter question or a parliamentary question. We're here to support you. My role in the office is not to be the community board's lawyers. I'm not here to give the community board's legal advice. It's very important because I get a lot of phone calls and emails from people asking, is this legal, is this not legal? My job is to be the legal officer just for the borough president and the borough president's office. I give informal guidance. I can give an interpretation of the charter. I can give you advice, but it's not a legal opinion. It's not legal advice. So I don't want to get a phone call from someone saying, well, you told so-and-so that this was the legal answer, or the lawyer at Borough Hall said this. Not having that, okay? Just make sure that's very, very clear. And that's to protect you, because the community boards have their own legal counsel, and that is the New York City Law Department. They represent the community boards whenever there's a legal issue. They are your legal resource. We're here, like I said, I'm here to help answer the easy questions. The hard questions, we go to the law department. I'm going to pause right here because we've just been joined by the borough president, and I know he wants to offer a few words of greetings. So,
first and foremost, thank you so much for serving. It is difficult to really get engaged as you will get engaged as community board representatives. Some of you were appointed by me, others were appointed by your council person, and it's challenging. And democracy is not a frictionless process. It's supposed to be challenging. And there are days you're going to walk out of the meetings and you're going to say, why did I sign up for this, you know? But in reality is that you're the first line of decision-making in your communities. And you should feel hours of debate. You should be engaged. You should bring passion to the conversation, because the way our borough, our city, and our country is shifting, we can't just sit back and watch our communities evolve without our input. We are made up of blocks that turns into neighborhoods, that turns into cities, that turns into states, that turns into what this country is about and what it represents. The voices start on the ground, and you're the beginning of the process. And I'm not romanticizing the importance of what you're doing. I am being factual. We listen to what comes out of the community boards, and we like to hear what their positions are and their concerns. I do not interfere. I appoint, I step away, and I allow you to do what you have to do and make the decisions on your own. We do expect for you to be there. If we're going to use our appointment, we expect for you to be in the room, be part of the process, to be thoughtful, to be mindful, and realize that this borough is diverse. 47% of this borough speaks a language other than English at home. This is an extremely diverse borough. Let's bring up all those ideas with us. Let's learn from each other, and let's be willing to listen to each other. That seems to be a trait that people have abandoned, to sit back and say, I want to hear you. Not hear you long enough so I can hear the period, so I can interject my opinion, but to fall back and say, let me hear what you are saying. Let me learn from what you are trying to tell me, because believe it or not, we are not always right. And we're going to shift in positions, and we're going to shift in ideas. I don't agree with myself 100% of the time. Or how am I going to agree with you 100% of the time? And it's all right to disagree. It's all right to say that is not my opinion. What is not all right is to be disagreeable. People have become so angry and so mean-spirited and so nasty that even when we disagree, we want to hurt each other with what we say and what we do. And that is just not right. That is not what we're made of as human beings. We're made of, how do I find a place that we both can exist together? And it must start with the community board. If you set the tone, the rest of this borough will set the tone. And I say over and over again, we're the third largest city in America. We're the largest borough in the city of New York. The way goes Brooklyn, goes New York City. The way goes New York City, goes the country. The way goes the country, goes the entire globe. It happens in your community board. The 18 community boards are not only setting the tone of what happens in Brooklyn, they're setting the tones what happens in New York and what happens in America and what happens in the globe. If we get it right, then this entire globe will start getting it right, and we will move in the right direction. Thank you for what you do, and congratulations to you.
God, how do I even follow that? Jeez. Rule number 1, never follow your boss. To finish up this slide, the other important thing that our office does with the community boards, and we'll get into this in a few minutes, is that we oversee and we chair both the borough board, and you heard mention of the borough board a few minutes ago from OMB, and the borough service cabinet. And community boards play a role in both of those committees, and we'll talk about that shortly. So the borough board is like the mini city council for Brooklyn. It's made up of all the city council members who represent the borough, as well as all of the community boards, typically the chairperson for every community board. And the purpose of the borough board is to be a policy advising body for the entire borough. It's to bring everyone together who has a stake in what's happening in Brooklyn and talk about issues that are affecting not just one block or one neighborhood or one board, but all of us together. We meet once a month. Those meetings are chaired by Ingrid, the senior advisor, and her team. And the purpose of the borough board is to review and make recommendations on zoning issues that affect more than one board, city property transfers, to mediate disputes between different community boards. Believe it or not, sometimes there are disputes between community boards, so that's very, very rare. As well as to provide a comprehensive statement of needs for the entire borough, based in large part on the individual statement of needs that each board puts together through their own process. So the borough service cabinet, just like the borough board is the policy-making body or advising body for the borough service cabinet gets into the nitty-gritty about how the city operates and how the city is delivering services within the borough. The purpose of the borough service cabinet is to discuss service delivery issues. And the members of the service cabinet are each of the city agencies that provide direct services in the borough: sanitation, Department of Transportation, parks, city planning, NYPD, FDNY, etc., as well as all of the district managers, the people employed by your boards to kind of be the day-to-day face of the community board office. And we discuss service delivery issues, not just, hey, you didn't pick up the garbage in front of 133 70th Street. It's, hey, we're noticing that you're not picking up bulk pickups in, Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, and Coney Island. Why is that? What's the problem? It's happening in more than one neighborhood. Let's address it across the borough. So that's what the borough service cabinet's about. Those meetings are held once a month, and those are chaired by my unit. It's either myself or my assistant counsel, Tanya Cantwell-Cockfield, who is not here this evening because she's at the Community Board 12 meeting, which is happening right now. But one of us chairs those meetings. We hold 10 meetings a year. 4 of those meetings are with the entire service cabinet, so it's all the district managers and all the agencies. And the other 6 meetings a year are with just the district managers and specific agencies to kind of do deep dives into specific issues or specific questions that we have. Okay, so the basics. Each community board can have up to 50 members. That doesn't mean that every board has to have 50 members. It means that you can't have more than 50 members. Every member who is sworn in tonight serves for a term of 2 years. 2 years. And every year we appoint half of the board. So 25 this year, 25 next year, assuming we appoint the full 50. You must reside in your district, or have a business interest in your district, or have a significant other interest in your district. Maybe your child goes to school and you're an expert in early childhood education and you want to join the community board to focus on those issues in that district or things like that. You have to have a connection to the district in which you serve. By virtue of the fact that you've already been appointed, you've already passed that test. But if anyone else ever asks you, how do I join the community board, they have to pass one of those 3 tests. And the exciting thing, I think, is that you have to be at least 16 years old to be a community board member. It used to be 18 years old. And then state law changed 3 years ago to allow us to appoint up to 2 individuals who are 16 or 17-year-olds to community boards. I see at least 1 here. I don't know if we have anyone else. I know and 2 here. So and we have appointed in the past as many as we can. So that's kind of exciting. It's a great way to get young people involved because guess what? They go to the same schools, they walk the same streets, they enjoy the same parks that all of us do, and they should have a voice in how the city is running those programs and providing those services. Removal. We hope to never have to remove everybody, because I know everybody in this room is going to go to every single meeting. There's going to be 100% attendance from everyone. I know that everyone in this room is not going to do anything to be embarrassing to the community board, embarrassing to the borough president's office, embarrassing to themselves. Everyone's going to be on their best behavior all the time. It's not going to be an issue. But if it does become an issue, members can be removed. You can be removed for not attending meetings, and you could be removed for doing things that are inappropriate of community board, of being a community board member. You are in some ways or in many ways a public official. You're not an elected official, you're not a politician, but you are a public figure. You are one of 50 in your neighborhood, and that's a big responsibility. And people who are not going to accept that responsibility and take it seriously and going to mistreat that privilege and that responsibility, we can have them removed from the board. You can be removed from the board for cause, either by the borough president himself or by the community board themselves. And there's a whole process that we're not going to get into all of that. Committees. We get a lot of questions about committees. How do we set up committees? What committees do we need to have? What committees do we not need to have? How do I join a committee and this and that? Here's the thing. Every board can determine for themselves how they want to run their committees. The city charter is very clear about this. It says that the boards can determine their own bylaws, their own rules of procedure, how they want to operate. So if your board wants to have committees based on issues like sanitation, parks, zoning, public safety, etc., that your board can do that. If your board wants to have committees based on neighborhoods, maybe you want to have a committee just about Bay Ridge, maybe you want to have just one about Dyker Heights, maybe you want to have one just about Fort Hamilton, you can do that. There's no right or wrong answer here. You can do anything you want. And the boards have different rules, and there's a lot of different leeway for how members can be appointed to committees as well. Sometimes it's the chairperson who determines who's on a committee. Sometimes it's the executive committee. It all depends on your bylaws. So make sure you get a copy of your bylaws to read them clearly and understand how your board is set up, how it's run, and how the committees are set up. The other thing that's exciting about committees, I think, and some of you may or may not already know this, is that you don't have to be a community board member to be on a community board committee. The city charter allows non-community board members to join committees. So because there's only 50 of you per board, maybe there's a lot of experts on early childhood development, and they can't all be on the board, but they want to serve on the education committee. Well, that's allowed. If the community board's rules allow it, that's allowed. And they can vote at the committee level, they can do all those things. They can't vote at the full community board. Those are the only votes that really count for an official action, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But non-members can be part of a committee as well. Yes? Can the bylaws be amended? They certainly can, depending on how the process is laid out in your bylaws. But each set of bylaws are different. You have to read your bylaws to determine how they can be amended. So this gets into some of the real nitty-gritty stuff. This is all in your packet. It's in the city charter. These are the specific tasks and responsibilities of community board members. Consider the needs of the district. Cooperate with, consult, assist, and advise any public officer, agency, local administrators of agencies, blah, 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 blah. This is all in the city charter. This spells out exactly what I've already talked to you about what your role is, what your purpose is as a community board member. It's in Chapter 70 of the New York City Charter, Section 2800. You have a copy in your orientation packet. So I'm not going to go through all this. You can read it any time. And you already know, really, why community boards exist and what your purpose is and what your role is. So I'm not going to bore you with this. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Okay. So here we're going to touch upon a few things that I already said. Every community board can set their own rules to determine how they elect their officers. Some community boards might have a chairman, first vice chairman, second vice chairman, third vice chairman, treasurer, secretary, recording secretary. There's no right way or wrong way. There's a chairman. The city charter lays out the responsibilities for a chairperson. But after that, each board can determine for themselves how they elect their officers, who those officers are. You have to make your bylaws available to the public. You are a public body. You are a city agency. You can't keep those bylaws hidden. They have to be available to the public. And you have to keep minutes of all your meetings. Usually the community board staff do this. But these questions come up every now and then. You have to keep minutes of all your meetings. And all of your meetings have to be public. There are no such things as private meetings of community board members. There are no such things as we're going to meet in the conference room and not tell anybody and then vote on things. You are a public body. You wouldn't see the city council holding a meeting without cameras or news cameras, right? I mean, You never see politicians go without cameras anywhere, right? Just like community boards can't do the same thing. You can't hold meetings in private. Everything's got to be public, subject to the open meetings law. Quorum. This is also important. Quorum is defined as a majority of the members who are present and eligible to vote. That's key, the part about eligible to vote. And when Alex gets up in a few minutes, he'll talk about that. Because some members might not be eligible to vote for certain things because they have a conflict of interest. And Alex will get into all of that and all the rules about that, so I won't dwell on that. But quorum is a majority of members who are present and eligible to vote. So if you have 50 members of a board and you have 30 people who show up at a meeting, you've established quorum, because a majority of those members present would be 26, okay? Voting. This also gets a little tricky, but it's actually kind of simple. In order to approve anything, you need to have a majority of yes votes of members who are present in a quorum. So that means you have to have more yes votes than no votes and abstentions, okay? You can't have like two yays, 1 nay, 13 abstentions. It doesn't work that way. You have to have more yes votes. You have to have a majority yes votes to approve anything at the community board. Yes? You need more yes votes than no votes and abstentions. You have to have a majority of yes votes out of the entire quorum.
So let me give you an example. Let's say you have 10 yes, 9 no's, and 4 abstentions. Does that vote pass?
No. No. You need more yes votes than no's and abstentions. So you need a majority, no matter what. Majority vote rules, okay? You cannot have any rules in your bylaws that require more than a majority vote. So you can't have a rule that says to change your bylaws, you have to have a 2/3 majority or a 3/4 majority. I don't think anyone has that, but if you hear anyone ever say that, that's not allowed, and that's specifically in the city charter. All votes must be openly conducted. That means there's no secret ballots. That means there's no, stuffing paper and no one's going to count it. You either do it publicly, everyone raises their hands, or they go a roll call, or if you're going to do paper ballots, it has to be signed with a name. This way there's proof of how everybody voted. These are all public records. Your vote is a matter of public record. So we should be able to look back, if we're 10 years in the future and someone's writing their graduate thesis about how great community boards are, and they want to look at the votes that Community Board 8 took on something, they should be able to see how every single member of that board voted at the meeting on May 22nd, 2018. No questions asked. You are required by the charter to meet every single month except for July and August, and I think every board is pretty good about doing that. You're required to hold at least one public hearing a month. Oftentimes that's done during your public meetings. And you're also required to set aside time during your public meetings to allow the public to speak in a public session. And that, I think most of the boards, or all the boards, are doing that already, public session for people to speak at. We're wrapping up, so I'm going to finish these last few slides. All meetings are required to be open to the public. We just said that a few minutes ago. You can only go into executive session in very specific, limited circumstances, which include matters that might imperil public safety, matters which might disclose the identity of a law enforcement officer or an informant, discussions regarding proposed, pending, or future litigation. This really doesn't apply to community boards, but this is based on what the New York State Open Meetings Law statute says. Medical, financial, credit, or employment history of an individual, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of an individual. That's the most common one that you're going to face. So when you're going to have deliberations to discuss hiring a new district manager, hiring a new staff member, those will typically be done in executive session. There's a specific process, though, you need to go into executive session. You can't just call a meeting and say, it's going to be an executive session meeting, so we're not going to tell anybody about it. You have to hold a regular meeting, and then during the regular meeting that's open to the public, a motion needs to be made to go into executive session You have to explain why you want to go into executive session. You don't have to say, I move that we go into executive session because I want to talk about how bad District Manager Jones is. You don't have to say that. But you can say, I want to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. This way it's on the record and we know why you're going into executive session. You need to have a majority of the entire board in order to approve a motion to go into executive session. This is the one time where law requires more than just what the charter requires. So the charter, we said earlier, said that you need to have a majority of a quorum in order to approve anything. To go into executive session, state law requires that you have a majority of the entire board. So if you have 50 members of your board, but only 30 people come to a meeting, you need 26 people to vote yes in order to go into executive session. That's the only time you need to have a majority of the entire board, okay? Just want to make that clear to everybody. Okay, my last slide. So, how can you be any questions, by the way, about anything I said? You might have more questions. You can always find me afterwards. You can email me or call me. All this information is also in your packets. But I want to just end on a somewhat positive note. How to be a rock star community board member. Really, the borough president touched on a lot of this already. So I'm going to be brief. I like to say it's remember the 4 B's. Be a community leader. You already are. You're here. You've been appointed. You're one of 50 or one of 45 or one of 40. You speak for people in your neighborhood now. You speak for people in your community now. Maybe you are a very influential and active block association leader. Maybe you're a very well-regarded educator, or you are someone who's a great community organizer and people follow you, people listen to you. Well, now you're given a platform, use it. Be the community leaders that you want to be when you applied to be a board member in the first place. Be present and attentive. This is important because you got to do the work. You got to show up. And not just the once-a-month meetings, you got to show up at the committee meetings. You got to roll your sleeves up and say, okay, how do we solve this really tough zoning question? You got to sit there and you got to study those zoning maps until you understand what R6A and R7B mean. You got to sit there and figure out, okay, well, we have to pick 5 budget priorities, and what are we going to choose, and what's it going to be? Be present and attentive. It's going to be very rewarding. Trust me, I've been there, I've done it. Be open-minded. The borough president really captured this beautifully. We all have our ideas. We all have our opinions. We don't all agree with everybody. This is a chance to show that local government can work. We see what's happening everywhere else across the country, and things look like they're broken and dysfunctional. It works in New York City. Let's prove it to them. Let's show how it works here. Let's show that we can get neighbors together who have different ideas agreeing on the fact that we should improve our parks, or that we want to see more schools built in our community, or we want to see a bike lane placed here, or we want to see a park bench placed there. Be open-minded about your neighbor's perspective, about your fellow board members' perspectives, and you'll be very rewarded by that. Be authentic and true. This one should be self-explanatory. Just be you. You were chosen for a reason, because we liked you. We liked who you were. We liked your application. We liked what you said. We liked what you stand for. We like what you believe in. We like the work you've done. We like the work you're going to do. So stay true to that. You don't need to change it. You know, don't need to all of a sudden say, well, I'm a community board member, so excuse me, I am supposed to get the 10% discount at the supermarket now. Or, excuse me, what about my movie theater discount, right? Those would be illegal, by the way, if you actually said any of that. Or maybe, you know, it's none of this like, hey, excuse me, I get to the front of the bus line first. No, be you. Be you, and you're going to see how great the experience is, and you're going to continue to grow in this role as a community board member. And that's the only thing we're asking of you. Like the borough president said, we're not going to ask you how to vote. We're not going to tell you how to vote. We're not going to say, well, wink, wink, nod, nod, could you do this, could you do that? We want you to be you, and we want you to show us how great your communities can be. So with that, I say thank you very much to everyone. I'm going to now turn it over to Alex Kipp from the city's Conflict of Interest Board, who is going to try to top my amazing presentation. It's always hard for Alex to top me. I usually go after Alex, so it's kind of a nice downward high. But Alex will come next, and after that, we'll hear from Richard, our land use director. Anyone did not get an orientation packet?
I got to eyeball people because there's new people that entered, so let me see all the hands that don't have currently. 2, 3. Okay.
Okay, and then I'm actually going to have to step out early this evening, unfortunately, but Keisha will be here the rest of the night. My information is in your packets. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me or my assistant counsel, Tanya Cantlow-Cocktail. But really, always go to your liaison first, and we're happy to answer any and all questions that you guys have. Congratulations again, and thank you very much.
My name's Alex. I work for the New York City Conflicts of Interest Board. I'm going to talk to you about the New York City Conflicts of Interest law, which normally we think about, it's kind of the robust way. It covers full-time public servants like myself, like Andrew, like people who work in the Borough President's office. But there are specific ways that the Conflicts of Interest law addresses community board service, particularly when we speak about voting, which is where we're going to spend most of our time talking tonight. That's not all we'll talk about. But first, let me do a couple of things before we get to the sort of the nuts and bolts of the law, which is to just, first of all, let me introduce myself. I am Alex Kip. That's a Dutch name, somebody told me. It means chicken, I think. I work as the Director of Training and Education at the Conflicts of Interest Board. Director. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Guess how many people I direct? Just guess. It's bigger than 0, ma'am. Come on. Guess again. It's bigger than 2. Less than 5, bigger than 3. Yeah, 4. Okay, very good. Okay, so that's what I do, and that's my job is to do things like this and to make videos about it, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's 2 other functions that the board has. One of them I hope you never experience, and the other one is the one I want you to use whenever you have a question so you don't meet the other people. The bad guys of the Conflict of Interest Board, they're not bad people, but they are charged with enforcing the Conflicts of Interest law. So when there are violations of the law, those are the people who deal with it. And I'm happy to say that we haven't had too many community board enforcement cases, but never say never. There's been a couple over the history, you know, the board's 30-year history, and I wouldn't want anybody in this room to fall into that category because you voted on something that you shouldn't have voted on, et cetera, et cetera. And so, most of what we do with community board members is interfacing with you on the advice side. And this is the way we're set up. When they designed this law 30 years ago during the charter revision process, they said, since we're going to have enforcement on it, we don't want this law to be a gotcha. We understand that reasonable people are going to constantly have conflict of interest questions, and they need a safe place to get them answered quickly and quietly. And so they constructed this legal advice unit. That's a separate part of the board. All they do all day is answer your questions for free, confidentially, over the phone or by email. And in order to get a hold of us, I believe some materials of ours were made available to you. You'll see our website and our telephone number. So call us whenever you want. We're available 9 to 5. We'll call you back if you don't get somebody immediately. And whatever answer we give you, we will also give you in writing, so you have that answer to share with other people should you choose to do so. So that's the way it works. Advice is where it's at. And just to give you a sense of that, last year we had 100 enforcement cases, and we had about 5,000 instances of advice. So advice is mostly what we're doing day in, day out. Okay. Oh, one more thing about advice, and then we're done with the process stuff. I said everything's confidential. That is true, except on one big thing that wouldn't be confidential. Can anybody guarantee? There's one kind of thing that I could call up and the board might say, whoa, that thing you just told me, I can't keep that confidential. I have to report that to the authorities, let's say. A crime, very good, a crime. That's right. Hey, Conflict of Interest Board, somebody offered me a bribe. I didn't take it, but I killed him. Well, no violation from us, but now the DA wants to talk to you right now. Now, that's a silly example, but here's where you're right. A violation of law that's already occurred. And so I don't want anybody to call us too late after something's happened. Don't call us up and say, hey, I think I already violated the law, because we are not a church, right? You know, hey, I feel so guilty. Like, oh, well, you sound guilty. Why don't you read the city charter 10 times? Or, you know, hey, it doesn't work that way. So call us before. That way we give you the peace of mind. If you can vote on the thing, we'll tell you that. And we'll give you a record that that's what we said. And if you can't vote on the thing, then you'll know that and you'll stay away from it. And that segues me into what we really need to talk about, which is voting. Okay. Now, when you face a conflict of interest, the first question I have is, when are you prevented as a community board member from participating in the discussions? Does anybody know? What's that? When you profit, back there? When you stand to profit personally? That seems reasonable a little bit, but I got a head shaking over there. What were you going to say? That's exactly right. You are never prohibited in engaging in the discussion. Even if you have a conflict of interest, you may always participate in the discussions like anything else. And for those of you who work for a city agency, that feels different because you know, as a city employee, if you've got a conflict of interest, you can't even participate in the discussion. That's not true for community board members. You can always participate in the discussion. The only question conflict of interest is going to bear on is voting, not discussion. So there are 3 or 4 big categories where you might face conflict of interest, and you are going to be precluded from voting. Your behavior is always going to be the same, and I'm going to call it the 3 Ds. We just had the 4 Bs, so we're going to call now the 3 Ds. It is disclose the conflict to my colleagues. Then I am free to discuss the issue like everybody else. And then the 3rd D is don't vote on the issue. Make sense? Disclose, discuss, do not vote. And here are the areas where you're going to use those 3 Ds. Area number 1. If you face in a committee meeting or at a full board vote something that is going to put a direct financial impact on your bottom line, the bottom line of the business you own, the business you work at, the business your spouse owns, your property, something else like that, the job that you work at, things like that. If there's going to be a direct financial impact on one of those things, then you are going to disclose, discuss, and you do not vote on that issue. Here's an example. Let's say I own a bar. Now, liquor license applications come before the community board at some point, yes? Okay, so now the liquor license application vote is coming before the board. Can I vote on my own liquor license application? No, I cannot. So first D, I disclose, hey, that's my bar. Second one, I am free to discuss. It's a great bar. You should re-up my liquor license. I've done such great work in the community. Look at all the school children we've helped. You know? That might get me in trouble. But in any case, and then the 3rd D is I don't vote on my own liquor license application. Disclose, discuss, do not vote. Now, I could squeeze in a 4th D in there, which is direct. And that's in terms of understanding where do you have to use those first 3 Ds? You have to use them when the financial impact is direct, not putative, not attenuated, not indirect. And let me give you an example of this. This is going to sound a little crazy. But let's say, for example, we had this case. This is an advisory opinion we had a couple years ago. Somebody asked, they said, hey, I'm a bar owner. I know I can't vote on my own liquor license application, but somebody else wants to open a bar close to where my bar is. Can I vote on their liquor license application? And what's the answer? Yes. Because we have no idea if that is going to have any effect on my bar's business or not. Like, let's say I own a bar on 7th Avenue in Park Slope. I'm really dreaming now, but let's say I did. There's lots of bars on 7th Ave. Now, I happen to be on a block that's had some challenges. Several of the bars have closed down. Now, there's not that many bars on there. It might be great if there's another bar there, or it might draw the customer. We have no idea if that's going to have any effect on my bar or not. It's too indirect. So when you got to use the 3 Ds, it's about your business, the business you work at, not the competitor's business, your business. Second example, just to develop this idea of direct benefit. Somebody asked a question one time. They said, hey, I own one little piece of property in a neighborhood, like an apartment in a building, and there's going to be a vote up to the Parks Department where we are going to ask the Parks Department to revitalize or build a park in the neighborhood where I own one apartment. Do I have to use the 3 Ds there? What's the answer? No, I do not. Because, first of all, we don't know if the Parks Department is going to do a good job. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. But the real issue is that I own too small a piece of the big effect that that's going to have. Sure, if we're talking about a zoning variance just for my building or my house, yeah, I got to use the 3Ds. But not when we're talking about a big swath of development and I only own one little piece of that. So that's not direct enough. Okay, next example where you got to use the 3Ds. Does anybody here work for a city agency? Aha, where do you work? I knew it. I knew it. And I'm not saying that because you look like an educator. I'm saying because there's 150,000 people who work for education, so that's always the educated guess and say education, right? Department of Education, okay, that's a really good example. Anything that comes up for vote that is directly about the Department of Education, if I'm a DOE employee, then I disclose, hey, I work for DOE, I then am free to discuss my own opinions, and then I do not vote on that. So if I work at sanitation, I don't vote on anything related to sanitation. If I work for a police department, I don't vote on anything on police department. You get it, right? It's about the city agency where you work at. Now, here's one, and then I'll get to your question. Here's one thing. You work at a school? You work at Central. Okay, so this is a little crazy how this is. What the law says is I can't vote on anything DOE related at all. So let's say I serve on a Brooklyn community board, but I work in a regional operations center in the Bronx. Got nothing to do with Brooklyn. I still cannot vote on anything related to Brooklyn, even though I've got no responsibility at DOE for Brooklyn schools. I'm a Bronx guy. If you've got DOE as your primary employment, you don't vote on a DOE issue. A question in the back first, the gentleman all the way in the back, and then I'll go around. Yes, sir. So the answer, the safe bet to that is that you would not vote on the charter school because charter schools are in some ways defined as public schools and in other ways are not defined as public schools. And so if you want to push back on that, you could call us for legal advice for clarification, but the conservative answer is because they get money from DOE and they get their charter from DOE, you wouldn't vote on it for DOE because they're so attached to DOE. But you could call us back on legal advice and push back a little bit on that because charter schools are, the proliferation of charter schools is a relatively new phenomenon, so the board's jurisprudence isn't quite as well developed there. But the safe bet is if you never wanted to have a violation, you would, if you're a DOE employee, you would not vote on a charter school issue. Follow-up question for the gentleman in the back. Table that for when we get to counting the votes, because that's a very important conversation about how conflicts of interest will affect the vote count, but I'll do that as a little bundle in about 2 minutes from now, okay? Ma'am, right there, and then, oh, I'm sorry, you had your hand up first, and then I'll go over here. What if I work at the Office of Administrative, yeah, nerd, not everybody knows what oath is, right? She's like, what if I work at oath, right? So oath is the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, and they oversee all kinds of tribunals like Environmental Control Board, Taxi and Limousine is under them now. I think maybe even some health stuff is under them, right? And so the question is, can I vote on things that are related to maybe taxi and limousine, but aren't related to oath, or does my recusal from voting have to be, does it cover all the agencies I touch? And the answer to that is you have to recuse from things that go directly to oath, not to other agencies that you interact with every day. Because that's too complicated. Like I work for the Conflict of Interest Board, we interact with everybody. Does that mean I can't vote on anything? Nah, no. It's the agency that pays you. That's the agency that you don't vote on their matters. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am, your question. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because that is the third place where you're going to use the disclose, discuss, do not vote paradigm. If I serve on the board of directors of a not-for-profit, you know, I'm one of the officers, I'm one of the big policy people at the not-for-profit. If something comes up for vote at the community board that's going to directly affect my not-for-profit where I sit on the board, I disclose that's my not-for-profit, I then am free to discuss, and then I do not vote on that issue. Now, one thing I want to clarify that is it's not something that my not-for-profit just likes. It has to be something about a program or a zoning variance that affects my not-for-profit. So let's say, for example, my not-for-profit was all about needle exchanges. We just thought those were the greatest things in the world. And the community board voted on a program to fund another needle exchange. Well, we think that's great because there should be more needle exchanges. As long as it's got nothing to do with my not-for-profit, it's just something my not-for-profit likes, I don't have to use the 3Ds. It's only when it's money or zoning or budget or something going directly to the not-for-profit where I sit on the board, or the not-for-profit where I'm employed, because then you're just an employee of the place. Good question. Question way in the back, and then I'll make my way up. Yes, ma'am. On leave from the agency, working on release to the union, yes? The answer to that question is that there is no published guidance on that issue, and what we need to establish on a confidential advice call is who's your actual employer there. My guess is it's probably the union and not the agency, but before you went ahead, like let's say you were on leave from DOE and you were at the union, before you voted on something related to DOE, you just want to check in with us and get that in writing. But I think that's what the answer is going to be. But that's very fact specific, and I want to have somebody actually practice law and answer that question officially on that. Next over here, there was, yes ma'am. HPD, Housing Preservation Development. So the question is, can I vote on developments that come into the neighborhood? And the answer is, you can vote on anything as long as the thing that you're voting on is not going back to HPD. So a development has lots of issues, right? Some of the development's communications are going to be before HPD. Some of them might be before HDC. Some of them might be before MTA, right? The development is one thing. To the extent that you're voting on an issue that goes back to HPD directly, says, hey, HPD, you got to do something about this development, then no, you can't vote on that thing. But if the thing you're voting on has no interaction with HPD, then you don't have anything to worry about. They need to vote on whatever they need to vote on, right? There's like, we're going to up zone, we're going to down zone, we're going to make more commercial, we're going to make more residential, whatever they're doing with the big development. This happens a lot in Brooklyn these days. The answer to that is going to be if there's a straight line back to HPD, you better not vote on it. If you feel like you're not sure because HPD's got a big piece of the project, call us up, let's walk through on legal advice and figure out what the answer is in your specific case. Because there might be some yeses and might be some no's. It depends on what the vote is about. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. So under the conflicts of interest law, what they say is if you've got a financial relationship with the client right now, then you don't vote on the issue that's going to affect their bottom line. If you had the financial relationship with them last year and you've severed ties or your contract is fulfilled or whatever, you no longer have an association with them, and so you can vote on the thing. The harder thing would be is like, let's say you've had an in and out relationship with this client for a really long time, like you're their attorney on basically every land use issue they've ever had. So sure, it's wrapped up this week, but next week I think I'll probably have something else. No, that's not good enough. You better use the 3Ds there. But that's not what you asked. What you asked is like, what if I consulted for them and now it's done? You don't have an association, so you don't need to use the 3Ds. Next, yeah, right there. Yeah, it affects committee votes as well. If I'm the bar owner and I'm sitting on the liquor license application committee, whatever you call that, the SLA committee, then if I'm the bar owner, I don't vote on my liquor license application in the committee as well as in the full board vote. That is correct. Over there. Sorry, she's like, I have a lazy eye, right? I'm kind of tired. So you, right there. Yeah, the blonde hair. Well, so you work for the Department of Health? Yeah, okay. So basically the issue there is if there's some program that directly communicates with or has funding about or some request to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, those are the ones that you use the 3Ds on. You don't have to worry about like... Interesting question. If your spouse works for a city agency, you do not need to use the 3Ds. If your spouse works for or owns the bar, then you do need to use the 3Ds. Because that's an effect to your spouse's bottom line if they own the bar, and that's an effect to your bottom line as well. Whereas if your spouse works for DOE, that's got nothing to do with, you know, the bottom line at all. So philosophically, the reason why you recuse yourself from voting on city agency matters where you work at is a conflict of office. Your primary duty as a city employee has got to take precedence, but that doesn't extend to your spouse's primary duty. That's why it's different. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so what the conflict of interest law says is that I cannot take a vote, I cannot vote on an issue where I stand to benefit, where my spouse stands to benefit, or or where my child stands to benefit, or my parent stands to benefit, or my domestic partner, those close relatives, or anybody with whom I have a financial relationship. So somebody I consult for, somebody I'm in business with, somebody I owe money to. So if we're talking about cousin, and it's not a cousin you live with, or you're married to, which happens sometimes. John Oliver had a piece on that in one of our former mayors last week on that. Then if it's just a cousin with not any of those other associations, then you've got no issue. Right? It's very close to relatives. It doesn't extend out to second cousins or anything like that. Yes, ma'am. Say the first part. You open a unit? Own a unit. Yes. Okay. Great question, and I like the distinction. So, okay, if I only own the unit, then the only thing that I've got to worry about is votes that pertain to my specific unit. And if I own one unit in a very large block of apartments, the fact of the matter is it's very hard to trace a direct benefit. 4-unit building's a little bit different. The smaller the building gets, the more we got to think about that. The homeowner association adds an additional wrinkle to it, and the conservative answer is that because you sit on the homeowner association, you probably shouldn't you shouldn't vote on anything related to the homeowner association. So you use the 3Ds. Okay, I want to move on, if everybody's okay with that. I want to introduce one other kind of quirk about where you're going to use the 3Ds. This is where it gets a little complicated. The big picture takeaway I want you to think about from what I'm about to say is there may be times when you're like, that feels a little close. That feels a little close to my bottom line. Maybe I need to make a call before I vote on that. And I'm going to do this as an example of where somebody got into a little hot water in a Manhattan community board. Here's what happened. A guy was sitting on the community board, and he was also executive director of a not-for-profit, so the head person. Now, the board was basically, there was a vote that came up before the community board that wasn't about the not-for-profit where he worked at, where he was the executive director, because he knew he had to recuse himself from that. But it was about something that could have benefited one of the board members of the not-for-profit whom he reported to. Kind of like he was voting on his boss's issue. And that's a little too close, because those people, you know, the board members control the executive director, and so he should have recused himself from that particular issue. So what I'm suggesting is, like, if there's something that comes up who's like a primary funder of your position or some other really close person like that, you might want to call us and say, like, hey, can I vote on that? And we'll give you confidential advice. Question. I think exercising a little bit of personal judgment and discretion about what the sort of the right thing to do on the board is important. And if I, for example, had an issue where a cousin of mine had a vote before the board, I might get legal advice on that saying, like, hey, can I vote on this thing? And they'll write back saying, yep, that's what the law says. I keep that in my back pocket. I then go to the board meeting and say like, hey, everybody, look, I know this is my cousin. I got legal advice. Cousin's not included in an associate. I just want to let everybody know about that so that when you vote, it's not scandalous in any way. Plus, you're doing everybody a service by, disclosing your relationship with a person. But the law says you don't need to preclude from voting if it's the cousin. You're just kind of going the extra step. Yes, yeah, first D only. Yeah. Okay, now, let's move on to the other things then. We were going to talk about voting. Let's do that real quick. What do you need in order to do business? What's that Q word? Quorum. Okay, quorum is 50% plus 1. So if we have 50 board members, how many do we need for a quorum? 26. Okay, let's say 26 members show up. Hallelujah, we are doing business tonight. Yes. Now, if we have 26 people show up, how many yes votes do we need to pass an issue? Majority plus 1. So we need 14. Or majority, not just, we need 50% plus 1 is what I meant. We need 14 yes votes. Now, those other 12 votes can be abstentions or noes or some combination, but I need at least 14 yeses to pass the issue if 26 people show up. Okay, here's what happens next. On the second issue, 3 people are going to drop out of the voting because they have conflicts of interest for different reasons. They are no longer qualified to vote. They cannot vote yes, they cannot vote no, and they cannot abstain. They can't do any of those things. So 26 minus 3 is what? 23. That's how many eligible votes you have on this second issue. Now, quorum is maintained because everybody participates in the discussion, but when you tally or tabulate that second round of votes, the number of yes votes you need to pass has gone down because it's a majority of votes out of 23, and that would be 12 votes. So I just want to make sure that people understand that. When you are eligible to vote, because you don't have conflict of interest, you can vote yes, no, or abstain. If you are ineligible to vote, you don't abstain. You are disqualified from voting due to conflict of interest, which you disclosed, and that's what you should put on the records. Okay, now, serving on committees. You can be on any committee you want. One little wrinkle. I'll go back to my friend at the DOE. While as a DOE employee, I can be on the Youth Services Committee or the Education Committee, I probably am not allowed to chair that committee. Why? Because I'm going to have to use the 3 Ds every time they talk about DOE, and they're going to talk about DOE a lot. If I was on the SLA committee and I owned like a bunch of bars in the district, I can be on the liquor license committee, but I probably can't be the chair of the committee because I'm going to have to use the 3 Ds all the time on the committee. So you can be on any committee, but if you got to use the 3 Ds all the time, you can't chair the committee. Chairing the meeting. If you are the board chair, you're going to have conflicts of interest come up too, and that's fine. When you face that conflict of interest, you are going to use your 3 Ds, but the only other thing is you have to step down from being chair at that meeting, and not just for that part of the meeting, but for the whole meeting. Because chairs have a little bit of power to set the agenda, etc., so you don't want any implication that they subtly affected it because of their conflict issue. So if you're the chair, you step down for the whole meeting where you use the 3 Ds. And now let me round this out with the last couple things, which are the same things that we see for everybody in the conflicts of interest law. These are places that probably won't be a problem for you, but I'll just hit them up with you anyway because they have come up occasionally. The first thing is resources. 70% of our cases in city government with conflict of interest involve misuse of resources in some way. People doing dumb things with city computers, city time, city offices, city personnel. I have seen every stupid thing in the book. I've seen people trying to run a travel agency from their city desk. That is dumb. That is dumb. That is way dumb. Why is that so dumb? When was the last time you used a travel agency? 1999, right? Let me introduce the next problem with this question. Do you know who I am? If you're asking that question, you are asking for a problem. And what I mean by that is, and I know that because I work for an agency that nobody's ever heard of, so I cannot misuse my position if I wanted to. Like, hey, I'm from the Conflict of Interest Board. What? Right? But if you get into a situation where you're like, I want free stuff, I want you to do this thing, I want you to get rid of that ticket, I want this inspection now because I'm a member of this community board, that's a problem because now you're using your position to get a hookup, and that's not what the position's for. Okay, now let's move on to gifts. Okay, the conflicts of interest law says I'm not supposed to take gifts from people doing business with the city. Valuable gifts is what they say. Valuable means something worth $50 or more. Now, I don't want to burst your bubble. I've worked for the city for 15 years. I've never been offered $50 worth of anything, ever. Ever. But I think this is what this law means for you. To the extent that people want to now hook you up because you are a community board member, you should be refusing those things because it's a misuse of position to take them. So let's say, I'll give you 2 examples. There's a bar that you go to all the time, and every time you have your 3rd beer or 2nd beer, they give you a free one, right? They comp you a beer. Nobody cares about that. They do that to everybody. You're not getting that because you're special, right? You're getting that because you're in the bar. Now, second case, bar owner comes to you and says, hey, my liquor license application is going to be re-upped. I'd really like you to come see how great our place is. Why don't you bring the family down? I'll buy you a couple rounds of drinks, buy you a dessert, maybe a dinner, and you can just go on a fact-finding mission for your tum-tum. That's a violation, right? You can go, but you got to pay your own way. And we actually have had a gift community board case a couple years ago. It was called Mattress Gate. Yeah, calm down. It's not what you're thinking. Mattress Gate happened when there was a hotel chain close to the JFK airport wanted to develop another hotel, and so they had some communications with the community board out there and a district manager, and they ended up gifting free sets of mattresses and box springs to those staffers and the board members, which is wrong on a lot of levels. First of all, it's an illegal gift. You can't take that. It's over $50. Second of all, you never take mattresses from a hotel, right? That's what are you thinking? That is not good. You should be fined just for lack of common sense. Okay, next. Remember that the board staff in your offices are considered your staff. So you can't get into a financial relationship with them, like you can't hit up the district manager for a loan, you can't lend them money, you can't have them photograph your wedding, and you also can't tell them to do anything politically. You can't ask them for a political donation, you can't ask them to volunteer for a campaign. You're considered the leaders of the board. You don't ask the board staff to do those things. And then one other thing for those of you who are lawyers, architects, engineers, consultants, CPAs, there's one other thing to think about for you, which is you already know, as we talked about with my friend back there, if you've got a client before the board, you're going to just use the 3 Ds. Like, hey, that's my client. I'm working with them on this project. I'm not going to vote on this issue because that's my client. It affects their bottom line, so it affects my bottom line. But the big question comes up is that this is your client for a long time. And now they want somebody to represent them at the community board. Can they have me represent them at my own community board? No, that's crazy. Like, hey, board, I'm going to take this hat off and put this hat on. No, that's confusing. Can one of my firm partners do it? If you want that to happen, if you want your firm to represent your client before your community board, you have to call us for legal advice, and you need a waiver under the law. It might be possible, but you've got to talk to us case by case. And then here's the last thing I will leave you with, because we've gone over time probably. Yes, okay, here's the last thing. Social media. I've been asked to talk a little bit about social media and your responsibilities now for the city, now that you are in this important position. Here's my gloss on social media. If you were a jerk in real life, social media allows you to be that much bigger of a jerk. I'm going to ask some real basic questions now elaborating on that theme, and the answer to the question is always, no, dummy. So let's try that now. Let's say there is an official community board website. Can I post things for sale on the community board website? Good. Can I post my own rants and opinions, personal opinions, on the community board website? On my personal social media site, can I represent as if I speak the official opinion of the community board? Okay. Can I disclose confidential community board information on my personal website? Can I, let's say I have a product that I want to sell, like I'm in a part of a multi-level marketing scheme. Can I take pictures of myself at the community board office standing in front of the flag of New York and say, community board member blah, 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 selling vitamin supplements? Okay, last one. I'm almost done with this. After this, I'm going to go to Starbucks, where I will be available to drink coffee. Would anyone like to buy me a coffee? No. Good answer. Okay, that's right. Because I can't accept anything, because that would be an illegal gratuity, and that'd be a violation of the law. Okay, now, everything I needed to get through, I got through. In your handouts, you have everything summarized. We talked about in much drier language. The most important thing is the telephone number that's on the very last page. You're going to call us when you have advice questions. It's okay that you're not going to remember everything tonight. You know about the 3Ds. You know generally where to use them. And if you forget anything you talk about, we're always available to lead you through this calmly, politely, and quickly. So with that, I will leave you, and I congratulate you on your service. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alex. So next, last but not least, we're having a ULURP land use workshop from our Director of Land Use, which is Richard Barrick. Thank you.
Good evening. So community boards play an advisory role in the land use process. The board formulates recommendations based on receiving a presentation of a particular proposal, conducting public hearings so that you get an understanding of how people outside the community board are thinking about things, holding committee meetings so you could have a dialogue among committee members, and having the committee make a recommendation to the full board, and then finally the board is in position to vote on the land use items. These are the type of actions that come before the board. Landmarks Preservation Commission, there might be an individual building designation if your community district has actual historic district mapped in them, or in rare cases where you have an individual landmark. The other items coming before you might be the establishment or an expansion of an existing historic district. Another body is the Board of Standards and Appeals, and the items that go before the Board of Standards and Appeals are typically variances. So this is the idea of doing something different from what zoning allows. It might be to allow, say, housing in a manufacturing area. It might be because I can't fit my building in the normal shape of the lot, so I'm gonna not able to use all my rights, so I need to get some relief on certain yard requirements, might be an example. So there are situations where we have very narrow lots from back in the day, and that's not the typical size of lots, so the yard requirements might be a bit overbearing. With these variances, there are 5 findings that typically have to be met, though nonprofits do not have to deal with the issue of showing that there's a reasonable return on investment. They're in a unique category. The Board of Standards and Appeals also reviews minor special permits. These may range from allowing schools in industrial areas, fitness clubs, small home expansions, which are typically found in Community Districts 15 and a little bit in District 11 and a small pocket of Community District 14. And whether it be variances or special permits, the boards can be most helpful in their role in simply weighing in terms of how the proposals comply with the character of the neighborhood, as the other findings are much more technical, so it's not expected that community board members would have that kind of capacity, but you certainly know the community. If you walk the block where the applications are, you have a sense of how things might fit in or not. So those are areas where boards could be impactful. Then the main bulk of what you deal with might be items before the City Planning Commission. And these items might be generated by the public sector or the private sector. So some of these items would include rezonings that promote development, and other aspects of rezonings might be more about preserving neighborhood character and quality of life. And we have some rezonings that are hoped for in certain parts of the community, but to date, the most recent city-led rezoning was for rezoning of the East New York Community Plan, which affected parts of Cypress Hills, East New York, and Ocean Hill. And then another type of application, city planning also has their version of special permits separate and apart from the Board of Standards and Appeals. And so they're typically to modify bulk regulations. Some of the neighborhoods have waterfronts, so there may be unique situations there. We'll occasionally see proposals to allow larger retail stores. In certain situations, stores above 10,000 square feet are not allowed in industrial districts as of right. but with a special permit. Suddenly you could have these larger stores to get approved. Something very unique might be to have an arena. It's not allowed as of right anywhere. They need this discretionary permit to be allowed in the first place. Other actions include the disposition of city-owned property, which might be typically done to promote economic development or housing, and typically that housing would be more about being affordable housing. We've had text changes. That's another item. So we changed the wording within the zoning resolution. Recent efforts included trying to make it easier to locate supermarkets in certain communities, and then to make it a little easier in terms of some of the lower density neighborhoods with certain residential uses. We've put in things where we have height limits through text changes. And then a very large thing that went before the community boards about 2 years back is something called quality and affordability zoning text amendments and mandatory inclusionary housing, which will come up anytime you'll get a residential zoning proposal. They're pretty much tied to a requirement to have mandatory inclusionary housing. And the idea of the zoning for quality and affordable would be to produce better buildings and also make it easier to use the affordable housing opportunities. We've had a recent change that just went through regarding self-service storage facilities. So the idea was to make it harder to site self-storage within industrial areas. And to try to make it easier or to remove some competition to have blue-collar type jobs to be able to locate. So if we don't have self-storage as of right, then there may be less speculation on land. So that was some of the thoughts behind that. And now we have another proposal before the community boards with a similar aim, which is hotels, to not make them as of right in industrial areas. So that's right before the boards now. So if you're in meetings through May and into June, you'll be part of those discussions with the community boards. And then when the boards review these land use items, they could make positions such as a straight disapproval. They could do a straight approval, but they could also do conditions. And the conditions could be with either scenario being for or against. Some people believe that if you do conditions with a disapproval, you might be heard better as the process continues, although it's not necessarily the case. So in Borough President Adams' role in the last few years in terms of reviewing, give you some ideas of his recommendations where you could take similar kind of stances on applications. So where he's called for affordable housing developments, he typically seeks for them to be developed permanently affordable, and the mandatory inclusionary housing is an example of getting there. But not every housing proposal does come with mandatory affordable housing. City may simply be disposing of property to the housing agency without a zoning change, so we still look to try to encourage permanent affordability and 100% affordability. So we use the term affordable forever, to that in future generations these units never become market rate housing. We've been trying, unsuccessfully to date, but we've been trying to help people who are paying more than 30% of their rent, a term known as being rent burden. So we've been trying to advocate to make it easier for households who are paying more rent than they'd like to qualify for the lottery. Unfortunately, the housing lottery doesn't let you pay more than 30% of your income for rent. So we're trying to change that if you could reduce your rent payment based on that affordable housing being built in the community, you should qualify. You're decreasing your degree of rent burden, but the zoning resolution hasn't accommodated us to date. But we think that's a good concept for the community boards to get behind. We've done other things in terms of trying to encourage more of a family mix of the affordable housing units, whether it be a private sector mandatory inclusionary or city-owned property. Too often it seems like the numbers of units are high, but they're stacked with a lot of studios in one bedroom. So the question is that going to really address the need in the community for people who are at risk of being displaced? We've also tried to push a concept that's not moved forward yet, which is if you have a school in the area that's near the housing site and that school happens to have a decent percentage of kids that are living in shelters, then in order to try to help these families get an opportunity in affordable housing, these are usually actually families with jobs that just still have to live in shelters because they just can't make ends meet. So the idea we have that even if that family wasn't originally from the community, even if that family is in a shelter in a different borough, if their kids are in the local schools, we think it's appropriate for those kids to be part of, their families actually be part of the housing lottery. So to date, we haven't had movement. I think part of it is because there's a federal lawsuit challenging the idea of local preference for community boards. The typical local preference is to try to get at least 50% of the units filled from people within the community district. And there are other things we've done to try to go above and beyond ULURP in terms of affordable housing as well. We've identified, for example, the idea of upzoning certain corridors. For example, the Broadway corridor running from basically coming off the Williamsburg Bridge, running down to the Broadway Junction where all the train lines meet. There are some areas there we thought were appropriate for affordable housing. So sometimes, even though the ULURP doesn't extend ourselves that far, sometimes it's okay to make more of a policy statement to try to encourage actions in your community. One of the sidebars in there, actually in Broadway Junction, we put out a concept to perhaps leverage municipal office development or relocation of municipal offices to the junction as a way to help buildings get financed to create office developments while also bringing services maybe more closely akin to where people live rather than everybody coming to downtown Brooklyn or elsewhere to try to get these services. So if a landlord could get maybe a 70% commitment of city-owned leases, it's pretty easy to go to the bank to get a whole project funded, where if you try to do it purely of development, no one's going to find you financing. We've also looked at advancing employment opportunities. For example, in the Williamsburg waterfront, there was a proposal for an office building, but part of that proposal has brand new zoning as a special permit that actually requires about 17% of the building to really be more restricted to uses that are more industrial in nature. So it's a way to try to bring in a little bit below market rent to give these uses an opportunity, and we're looking to see that concept spread further into the city. There's not been any movement in that regard yet, but that's something we think is important, that the industrial zoning you have in your community can be eaten up by retail, by offices, still a little bit more by hotels, but it doesn't mean that anything industrial happens in these sites. We're trying to find ways to leverage that and balance the marketplace. As for jobs, Borough President has constantly called for linking minority women business enterprises and local business enterprises to developments. We've had an evolving of that with HPD now when they put a certain amount of funds into a development where they actually require that. So we've seen some breakthroughs in that regard. Other areas going beyond housing and jobs, we've called for developments to incorporate supermarkets where we think it's appropriate. And if an upzoning would actually risk a displacement of a supermarket, we've called for holding back the full development rights unless they put a supermarket back in. Again, that's not policy to date other than the Borough President, but we think it's a great goal for the city. And again, this is something community boards can think about as you have applications before you. We've also called for adding public school classrooms into developments where we think the size of the site could allow, even if it's a grade or two, it could be an annex to a school. We have some parts of the borough that are very overcrowded and they're starved to find sites for school seats. And we've also tried to build on the success of the BAM, Brooklyn Academy of Music Cultural District, and trying to champion innovative ways through zoning to encourage more cultural facilities, dance facilities, and that type of recommendation. We look at other opportunities elsewhere in the borough where there may be a retail component to try to encourage those kind of uses that can't necessarily compete with retailers to fit in, and yet these uses are spread out through the borough. We've had success with childcare leases. When the de Blasio administration took over from Bloomberg, we were getting the same old, oh, we'll do the lease for 5 years. Now we have leases coming to us for at least 10 years with 2 5-year renewals. And last week at our ULURP hearing, they actually offered us a 15-year lease commitment with 2 5-year renewals. So what that does is it takes that property away from market speculation, because as these leases come due, the city can't necessarily demand the child care center remain. So we have to try to work with landlords, and if we could lock in longer-term leases, we're kind of deferring that market speculation. We also try to push sustainable and resilient features of developments. The city has been pushing that to a certain extent. HPD developments with LEED standards, but we try to push rooftop, whether it's solar panels, a green roof, which is basically lawn plantings, a blue roof, where basically it's like a swimming pool on top of the roof to collect the rainwater, sometimes in tandem with green roofs. On lower budget projects, at least paint the roof white so we don't have that much absorption of the heat. Where we have taller buildings, we've called for mini wind turbines. If you walk out the building and you look towards downtown Brooklyn, you'll see a tower that actually has a wind turbine. You go to the Whole Foods in Gowanus, you'll see some wind turbines. In the public realm with the sidewalks, we've called for sidewalk rain gardens, used to be called bioswales, where basically it's a planted area that's connected to the tree pits, where the storm water running along the curb of the street, rather than just find the nearest sewer grate, actually filters into these rain gardens, and water gets delayed from getting to the sewage treatment plant, which helps the water get processed better before it's released to the harbor. And we've also pushed for street tree plantings. Another initiative, Borough President, is called Cross Brooklyn, which is basically connecting residents on safe streets. So we've looked at the corners of the street, and we've looked there where these applications, where it be a child care center, senior facility, or even a private sector development, to try to encourage, when they do a builder's pavement plan for new construction, that it actually, where appropriate, the crosswalk actually extends at least to the distance of the parking lane, to try to shorten that distance where people crossing are literally within the traffic flow. And they even have cheaper initiatives where the city will paint a similar area with bollards, so they just need a maintenance agreement, but that's a quick fix. It doesn't cost a couple $100,000 that a sidewalk extension would cost, and it's a way to achieve safety, and you'll see them around more and more. So everything I just mentioned that the Borough President advocates typically, these are the type of things that could be in community board resolutions. They're not necessarily straight land use recommendations, but they might advance quality of life and other aspects within a community. So land use recommendations themselves, they need to be in scope of the action to actually be effectuated at the City Planning Commission and or the council. So if I start with a 4-story existing allowance of development and the developer wants a 9-story district, I can't choose an 11-story district, I can't choose a 2-story district, but the community board could choose a district that's in between in many cases. Boards could also try to leverage these land use actions by being part of community-based movements. In some neighborhoods, it's about establishing historic districts, and in doing so, reaching out to the Landmarks Preservation Commission. We've had ongoing efforts in Park Slope for additional phases. In Crown Heights, there's a beginning of some talk. It hasn't gotten as far yet, but people south of Eastern Parkway are definitely having that conversation. Sunset Park has been having that conversation for many years. Other things is in terms of the zoning, while many neighborhoods had some level of rezoning that allowed some level of preservation of context under the Bloomberg administration, we haven't had as many actions to date done by the city. We only had one action approved to date, which was the rezoning out in East New York, Brownsville, Cypress Hills. But the Bushwick community is in dialogue with the Department of City Planning. I've been working with the Crown Heights Community Board and East Flatbush Community Boards 9 and 17 towards achieving contextual-based rezonings. And the idea is to, as much as possible, reflect built character, but in fairness, we can't simply look of shutting things down from development. We also have to seek out opportunities, because through these opportunities, we also can leverage the requirement of mandatory inclusionary housing to provide affordable housing within the community. So been working with Districts 9 and 17 to see if they could identify corridors that might be appropriate for growth as part of a dialogue with the Department of City Planning. So other areas that we've had conversations about mismatch of zoning, but not necessarily as active, have been Bath Beach, Brownsville, Bensonhurst, Coney Island, additional sections of Crown Heights North, which actually overlaps and extends beyond their landmark district on the eastern section of the board. The Crown Heights area also includes of District 9's Profic, Lefford Manor, and the Wingate community. There are sections of East New York that might be worthy, even Marine Park and Sheepshead Bay, and to some extent. So there are other things in terms of the zoning that could be more about quality of life. There's a debate in terms of parking requirements. As we bring higher density zoning districts out to the borough, they come with easier to avoid parking requirements. And that may not be as appropriate when you get to parts of the borough that are less transit rich, because part of your life to do other things in your life become car oriented, and therefore the train lines or the bus lines don't actually satisfy the typical quality of life of a typical week. So some of the things to consider are, do we need to modify, not have it as a one-size-fits-all parking requirement? We can use zoning in retail areas to actually require non-residential use. Just because the zoning has retail rights doesn't mean the developer uses it. So in these rezonings, do we want to require the ground floor either be retail or community facility uses in the ground floor? These are ways that activate the street. We actually have a development nearby in Borum Hill. The building's lifted up and it's basically stilted, and you look through this mesh and there's parking, and that's what you look when you walk past it. Community wasn't too happy about that. So other things to think about in terms of mandatory housing, inclusionary housing districts, looking at where you have proximity to transit, where you might have wide streets, where you have similar height buildings to try to encourage affordable housing opportunities. So these are ways that as community board members, whether you're on the land use committee or not, to try to get involved in a land use process. Now, in terms of when the process hits the public stage, it's called ULURP. Occasionally, developers will come to your community board prior to that to brief the community board on the projects. But what happens is the community board gets 60 days to review this. So typically, you'll have 2 monthly meetings in that time frame as a full board, although sometimes that first monthly meeting is prior to an opportunity for the committee to act, so you're really not using that first monthly meeting to act. Boards do things a little differently. Some boards will hold their public hearing as part of a full board meeting. On simple items, that's okay. On very complicated items, I would not suggest that. Some boards will have their hearings at their committee meeting. Again, that's not always the best way of proceeding, because there may be other items in the agenda and it may not allow enough time for discussion. And some boards will hold a special night for these hearings. And even if you're not on the committee, it could be very helpful to attend these presentations by developers and to hear the community at large, rather than simply, well, I made no effort, I'm going to listen to my committee, or I didn't pay attention to my committee, I'm just going to wing my vote for whatever stimulates me. So there's an opportunity to be involved in the process. After the community board puts their motion out there, the borough president has 30 days. And then the City Planning Commission has 60 days. Borough President is not required, but we always hold public hearings. We hold them in the evening. City Planning Commission holds their public hearing on Wednesday, and they're in the morning. City Council finishes the process. They get 50 days. The hearing is held by a subcommittee of the Land Use Committee. Although deliberation by the Land Use Committee, you could watch it. It's certainly open to the public. You just can't participate, and then goes to the full council for a stated meeting. Other things board can do is initiate what's called a 197A plan, which is basically an effort of community planning that's in the city charter. And a few community boards have taken on that effort. And when agencies do something in contradiction to the community's adopted plan, because it's adopted by the city council in the end, these agencies actually have to explain themselves. So we've had such plans adopted in Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Red Hook, and the waterfront area of Sunset Park. And so boards may comment on these initiatives that are more citywide, such as the city waterfront plan. Even if you don't have a waterfront boundary, there may be reasons to have interest in there, because if you're not living by the waterfront, you might be working, or you may want to enjoy it from a recreational sense. So to finish up, the Borough President's Office, mostly me, and staff from the City Planning Commission, Board of Standards Appeals, and Landmarks can be available for technical assistance on matters, so free to reach out through your committee capacity, and even not in your community board capacity, especially if you're involved in civics, because civic engagement is important as well. So there are times I'm involved with speaking to business community, development community as well. Sometimes I'm hearing from both sides of and I'm giving technical assistance to all sides of the matter. I can't take prejudice one way or another. It's just to be helpful. And so I'm happy to assist in helping everybody understand. We've done presentations on ULURP to certain community boards. We've done land use zoning presentations to help people understand the built character of their neighborhood, how it may or may not match the zoning, and we'll show you what zoning allows in your districts. We'll show you what zoning might better reflect what you want to see, either the built character or a slight deviation from that. So if there's areas that I haven't done already, we'll work on new presentations. The areas that we've already presented, we can go back and do them again. And if you want to reach me, the information I'm told is in the packet, but just to say it, my email is rbearak, B-E-A-R-A-K, @brooklynbp.nyc.gov. And my phone number is 718-802-4057. And you could all go home at this point, or if you have any questions, I'll take them.
So can you just briefly have all the new community board members stand up? We're going to close out. And we want to give them a hand. And we want to thank all of the past members who came out and the family members who came out to support them this evening. We thank you for your appointments, for coming out tonight. We thank you for giving your service as volunteers to the community board, and your community thanks you. Have a wonderful evening. You know where to reach us if you need to find us. Reach out to your liaisons first.